the biggest amount of shift is going to be people are looking for authenticity and realness. And if you can prove realness, then you're going to get the customer over everyone else.
Check one, check two, check three, check it. The way that I get...
Many people think that networking and selling is a game built for extroverts, that if you're quieter, more thoughtful, or naturally introspective, you're ill-equipped to play, or at least are at a severe disadvantage. But what if that assumption was completely wrong? In this conversation, Dave Jenyns and I sit down with Matthew Pollard, known globally as the Rapid Growth Guy. Matthew has helped businesses scale from 0 to millions, worked with companies like Microsoft and Capital One, and built his entire methodology around one powerful idea, that introverts don't need to become somebody else, that they have an inherent built-in advantage when it comes to selling and networking. They just need a system that works with who they already are. If you've ever felt uncomfortable working the room or believed sales just wasn't for you, this conversation might completely change how you see sales and networking as an introvert. Let's get into it.
For the people that are listening that kind of don't really understand where I kind of came from, I had a reading speed of a sixth grader in late high school, and I kind of fell into sales because I lost my job, and it was 93 doors before my first sale, and I literally taught myself how to sell watching YouTube videos. And so what was interesting is system and process was what I was looking for. I went to YouTube, I was like, what's the system and process? And I would spend 8 hours in the day applying what I learned, and then I'd rush home and I'd spend 8 hours practicing, and then I'd spend weekends 16 hours practicing, and that's how I got better really quick. And everyone's like, oh my God, I don't want to do that for 16 hours. And I'm not suggesting that. There's smarter ways now. But I tried to apply the same approach to networking, and I came unstuck. So when I moved to the United States, I decided that while I'd built businesses in Australia, I wanted to help other people grow their businesses. And I remember, and this wasn't even networking like in a physical event. Like I remember I'd moved into an apartment just to look for a place to live in Austin, Texas. I really wanted to help introverted service-based businesses predominantly obtain rapid growth, because I think there's something heroic about a person with enough talent, skill, and belief in themselves to start a business of their own, especially if they're introverted and they think the cards are stacked against them. But I hadn't really worked out how I was going to explain it to somebody. And I remember being at the gym at this apartment complex, and I actually got talking to some guy that owned a gym. And he started to tell me about how much he loved the gym and being part of people's fitness journeys. And it literally was about 10 minutes in where he looked at me and he said, and what is it you do? And I said, and I literally, to this day, am still embarrassed that I said this. I said, oh, thanks for asking. I'm a sales trainer. And it was like the coloring of his face changed. It was like he decided that he didn't like me from that one statement. And he started to tell me how he hated dogmatic salespeople, and he'd hired salespeople for his sales team in the past, and he believes in authenticity, and salespeople just don't have that. And I was like, I'm different. I started telling him about my 93 doors, and I felt like I was slamming something down his throat he did not want. And I'm like, I was probably at that point trying to make a friend. I wasn't even trying to sell to someone, and I was defending my honor almost. I'm like, I'm never doing that again. So I decided, and I actually went out networking about a month later. And it's funny how much I'd ruminated over that. Like with sales, I could always go, well, it's an external system, I can tinker with it. But this was like a offense to my nature. And I was like, I'm never calling myself a sales trainer again. So the next time I was out, somebody asked me what I did, and I'm prepared this time, right? I said I was in marketing. Everybody loves marketers. And the response I get was, oh, I need someone in marketing. How much do you cost? And I'm like, we just met. Now we're talking about price. That was so awkward. Next person told me that they already had someone in marketing. And I'm like, what am I supposed to say now? Like, I'm different. I got magic ruby slippers. Like, it was really tough. And I remember going home, and I feel that the only thing that was in existence was this thing called the elevator pitch, which I'm sure that's the reason why you cringe, which is definitely a system, right? I do this for this group of people, even if. It's just terrible. And I feel like that's what most people see as good networking. I've got this killer elevator pitch. I just feel like it sounds inauthentic, contrived, transactional. But what I found was if people didn't do transactional networking, they did what I call aimless networking, which is they go to these rooms, they have these shallow conversations, finally comes up, what is it that you do? And they respond with something like, especially in Australia, well, my day job's this. Who wants to buy from someone that underwhelmed with what they do? And then other people then will do the elevator pitch. What I found is the best way to respond was to not make it about you. So when somebody asked me what I did, I would say, thanks for asking. I'm the rapid growth guy. Just like I said, I was a business coach. And then when they said, what exactly is that? I would say, well, one of the things I love to see more than anything in the world is an amazing introverted service provider with enough talent, skill, and belief in themselves to start a business of their own. But what I find, I just hate seeing this. They get stuck in this endless hamster wheel of struggling to find interested people, trying to set themselves apart, trying to make the sale, really feeling like people only care about one thing, price. Do you know anyone like that? Now I'm starting a dialogue. They would always say yes, because I've researched the room before I've went. I've connected with them in advance using LinkedIn. And because of that, when I get the affirmative, I then say, well, I'm on a mission to help people just like you realize you really can have a rapid growth business doing what you love, just not by getting better at your functional skill. You're probably amazing at that. Instead, just focusing on 3 things outside the scope of that really allow you to build a business that revolves around you, your family, and your life, not the other way around. Actually, let me give you an example, and then I'll move into a story.
Matthew's journey didn't start with confidence or charisma. It started with struggle. He didn't grow up believing sales came naturally. He taught himself obsessively by breaking things down into systems, practicing relentlessly, and learning what actually worked. But when he tried to apply that same logic to networking, everything fell apart. Label yourself the wrong way and you'll talk yourself out of selling. Say too much and people often shut down and disappear. What Matthew realized was simple but powerful. The problem wasn't networking, it was people making the conversation about themselves instead of the person in front of them. Once he shifted the focus from pitching to understanding, from explaining to inviting, everything changed. He didn't need to become louder, he became clearer, more human, and more intentional. And that's where the real lesson begins. Matthew explains how real sales aren't made by hooks or pitches, they're made of stories. We're hardwired to receive messages as stories, so making something more personal will make it more attractive to human beings. So packaging something up in a story and making it more personal makes it more attractive.
Most people think they tell great stories, but they don't. They tell testimonials or case studies. So if you think about a story, like a real story, it should be more like the story of how you met your spouse, right? Over time, you've iterated, it's become better. It's more like a theatrical masterpiece. Now, a lot of times when I'm telling people about storytelling, they think that it's about saying, oh, we worked with someone that had this problem and we got them a great result. And it's like, no, what you've got to do is firstly define the character, right? So if you don't say Microsoft had this problem, you say David, the CTO of this organization, had a problem. And then you show me how it's affecting their life. Because again, you want to show that you see them, right? Most people, even when a salesperson's really good, often walk away feeling like their problem was seen, but they weren't seen. So you want to define the character, and you don't just talk about how it affected them at work. Like the best stories are like, and that meant that he missed her kid's football game or dance recital, and because of that, the parents were, her wife and his wife and child wasn't speaking to him, and you build that pain in. And then the best stories don't say, so then I worked with him and I was amazing. It was on our very first call, he realized, and he went to work doing this stuff. And you give them the credit. People know you were involved. Like, why? It's just an ego thing to say, I did this.
You want them to be the hero.
You want them to be the hero. Yeah. But you also want the person hearing it to know that you're humble enough to make them the hero, because you want them to believe that if they're going to hire you, you're going to make them look like a hero to their spouse or to their boss, right? So you then make them the hero in the story. As they did this, they went and did the work, and then they got this amazing result. And then a story always finishes with a moral. So a great moral is, really highlights what the learning was. Now people are like, but the learning's obvious. I don't need to be explicit about that. And I'm like, well, you need to be explicit for 2 reasons. Like, we all grew up differently. We all think differently today because of whether or not we had our morning coffees or not, or, whether or not we had a fight with our spouse or whatever. Our framing is different. And because of that, we have to imply the moral for 2 reasons. One is to make sure it lands correctly, and the second is so we can end it by saying, does that make sense? And getting them to nod. And then that then leads to the sale or the conversation about what to do next. Now, please don't sell in the networking room. Worst thing in the world to do. You'll get interrupted. Get it booked into your calendar to have a dialogue. And by the way, I don't even go networking to find prospects, by the way. I go networking to find momentum partners and champions, different people that can open doors for me or give my work credibility. But from a storytelling perspective, a true story speaks about the real cost, the opportunity cost, and the emotional cost of the problem through the eyes of the person experiencing it. And then it closes out by saying they did this thing, and then they got these results from a real cost and opportunity cost, which is always higher, and the emotional cost perspective. The first 2 absolutely get somebody to make a decision eventually. The emotional cost and making that person feel better is what gets them to make a decision today. And that's when you lead into the moral. It's really not that difficult as long as you stop and what I feel most people do wrong is they apply a testimonials mindset to it. And it's funny, when I do this with massive corporations, they try to turn it into a white paper or a case study. When you read them, it's like, wow, they were so lucky to work with you. You're amazing. No one wants to share that. They want to read a story about this company that was humbled and honored to be part of this person's amazing journey where they were the hero. And if it reads like that, then it's a perfect story.
How do you actually create a real connection in a world that's becoming more automated, more scripted, and more artificial by the day? Next, Matthew explains why in this new age of AI and digital marketing, realness now wins. How introverts can lead with empathy and the small shifts that make people actually want to engage again.
The biggest amount of shift is going to be people are looking for authenticity and realness. And if you can prove realness, then you're going to get the customer over everyone else. And you can do that with LinkedIn messaging. You can prove that in face-to-face networking. And I don't think that this is generated by AI stamp or filtering out AI stamps is going to cut it. As we are becoming less and less connected and more robotic, we need to find ways to insert connection. Why my networking script says, I love to see, I hate to see. What we find is connecting with people, the very first thing, and as an introvert you might hate this, is to send them an audio message. And everyone's like, oh, we can send video messages. Video messages use an external platform. I can't prove whether it's real anymore. But on an iPhone and an Android, you can send somebody a 60-second audio message. And I have found it is to date the best way to get somebody that's ghosted you to come talk to you again. Because you send them an audio message. Now, you always connect with them before the call. You send them an audio message, and introverts are great with leading with empathy. Dave, don't worry about the deal, mate. It's just unusual for you not to get back to me. Just let me know that you're okay. And they're always going to respond for two reasons. One is, it was nice for you to lead with empathy. And the second is they want to know how you did it. Most people on LinkedIn have no clue that audio messaging is a thing. And the moment that I say audio messaging, everyone goes, oh, but I send videos. I'm like, that's not the same thing. Unfortunately, because of AI, there are, and I hate the fact that there are now people that I follow on YouTube that now have AI avatars and they think that that's okay. Right? I don't listen to half of them because I can churn through somebody that's real.
Click the link below if you want a free worksheet to help you implement this and put it into practice immediately. The Create Your Lead Magnet worksheet breaks the process down into clear steps from identifying the real problem your audience cares about to shaping a compelling offer that moves them forward in the buying journey.
The sales book, if you just download the first chapter, it gives you the 7 milestones we didn't have a chance to go through today. But if you go through it and literally put what you say in a sale under those 7 milestones, firstly, it'll convince you can sell as an introvert. But if you put what you say into those milestones, you'll quickly realize there's some things out of order. And so if you fix that order, you'll then realize there's some gaping holes. And that's usually around telling, great stories and asking great questions, not just questions for questions' sake. You'll also realize, by the way, there's some things that don't fit, and you should absolutely throw that away. You shouldn't be saying it to customers. If you do that, people will double their sales in the next 60 days. So I guess the question is, if you've got a lead issue, do the template. If you've got a sales issue and you need to systemize the sales process, which, especially if you're spending a lot of money on Facebook ads, that's probably where I would go. Download the first chapter of The Introvert's Edge at theintrovertsedge.com.
What this conversation really shows is that selling, networking, and influence aren't personality traits, they're skills. Matthew's story reminds us that you don't need to be louder or more extroverted. You need clarity, you need empathy, and most importantly, you need a system that leverages who you are rather than one that works against you. This system rethinks networking conversations, allows you to lead with authenticity, and compels prospects by telling stories that make other people the hero. The message is consistent. People don't buy with pitches, they connect with people. And when you approach sales as a process, one built on understanding structure and real human connection, introverts don't just compete, they thrive and win. The real takeaway here is, if you're an introvert, you can sell. And if you have a system, you can do so at the highest level. If this conversation helped reframe how you think about marketing growth or building a real business, make sure you watch the video on the screen and subscribe. We've got a lot more of these deep dive conversations coming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Stay awesome.